There are hundreds of characters in the Harry Potter books, from big names like Severus Snape and Hermione Granger, to minor roles you might not even remember, such as Eddie Carmichael or Ali Bashir. When turning the, at the time, unfinished book series into a movie franchise, it isn't easy to know which characters are important and which are background names. Who would have thought that young Sirius Black, whom Hagrid borrowed the flying motorbike from, would become a significant role 2 books later? The problem of not knowing where the story was going led to some actors being replaced over time. Also, considering filming started in 2000 and finished in 2010, you might have to think about some actors getting other jobs that conflict with the Harry Potter filming schedule. Actors who no longer want to act, or child actors growing at different rates, like how the actor who played Colin Creevey went through a major growth spurt and became taller than most of the other actors. For one reason or another, I found 40 actors who were replaced throughout the movie franchise. Today, we will cover each of the replacement and a why if possible. I will also sprinkle in a few honorable mentions regarding casting. Now let's dive in. Number 1. Susan Bones. Susan Bones was a Hufflepuff student sorted the same year as Harry Potter. Several of her family members were killed during the First Wizarding War. Her auntie Amelia, who was at Harry's hearing at the Ministry, was a victim in the Second Wizarding War. Susan would join Dumbledore's army and fight during the battle at Hogwarts. Susan Bones was initially played by Eleanor Columbus, daughter of director Chris Columbus. She was in the first 2 films that her father directed. Columbus was one of the very few non-British cast members, but this was allowed due to her father and the fact that she didn't have any speaking parts. She was replaced by actress Emma Jane Corbis for the Deathly Hallows movies. She also played an unidentified Hufflepuff in Order of the Phoenix, which could be assumed it was meant to be Susan Bones. The replacement was necessary because Chris Columbus had handed over the director reins and was headed back home to the States with his family. Number 2. Hannah Abbott. Hannah Abbott was a Hufflepuff student sorted the same year as Neville Longbottom. She would become a prefect in her 5th year and join Dumbledore's army. The following year, she would be pulled from Hogwarts after Death Eaters killed her mother. However, she did return to aid in the battle at Hogwarts. Hannah Abbott was initially played by Charlotte Skiach. She appeared in Chamber of Secrets and The Goblet of Fire. Despite her lack of lines, a couple of close-up shots of her in Goblet made her a little less of a background character. She was replaced by actress Louisa Warren for the Deathly Hallows movies. This was another non-speaking role, but she was there with her fellow Dumbledore army members. As Hannah Abbott wasn't a prominent role, and there was a gap between movies, Charlotte Skiach would go on to be trained as a dancer at the London Studio Centre. This was when Louisa Warren landed the role when Hannah Abbott was brought back. Number 3. Pansy Parkinson. Pansy Parkinson was a Slytherin student who was sorted the same year as Draco Malfoy. Her family was part of the Sacred 28. She was close friends with Draco and was even his date for the Yule Ball. In her 5th year, she became a Slytherin prefect. When Voldemort and his Death Eaters came to Hogwarts, Pansy was the one who suggested to turn Harry over to him. Pansy Parkinson was initially played by Catherine Nicholson. Catherine was in Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. Genevieve Gaunt replaced her for Prisoner of Azkaban, which was the only movie she appeared in. Later in life, though, she appeared in another JKR series, 2 episodes of CB Strike. Number 4. Pansy Parkinson. Laura Shotton was next to play Pansy. Shotton was in The Goblet of Fire and The Order of Phoenix. Pansy, again, is just a background character, but she is still always found near Draco Malfoy when you spot her. Number 5. Pansy Parkinson. Scarlett Bryan was the final actress to play Pansy. She appeared in Half-Blood Prince and the Deathly Hallows films. Pansy finally gets some spoken lines that makes it into the movie. It seems like this role was recast many times because the screenwriter saw Pansy as a background character. There probably wasn't a multi-movie contract until she started having lines. This is when they would hold auditions for the role rather than hiring an extra, and Scarlett Bryan got the gig. Number 6. Ernie Macmillan. Ernie Macmillan was a Hufflepuff student sorted the same year as Seamus Finnegan. When the Chamber of Secrets was open, Ernie believed that Harry was the heir of Slytherin, but when Hermione was attacked, he apologized to Harry for thinking wrong about him. He would later become a prefect and join Dumbledore's army. During the battle at Hogwarts, he used his Bora Patronus to fend off Dementors. Ernie Macmillan was initially played by Lewis Doyle. He appeared in Chamber of Secrets and Goblet of Fire. In the Chamber of Secrets, his only line was cut from the final film, but a deleted scene is available to watch. He was replaced by Jamie Marks for Deathly Hallows Part 2. This is pretty much a background role, and you can barely see him. I'm not sure if Doyle didn't get the call back for such a small part in Deathly Hallows, or if he chose not to disrupt whatever he was doing at the time to join, but it looks like both Ernies didn't continue in the acting field. Number 7. Michael Corner. Michael Corner was a Ravenclaw student sorted the same year as Dean Thomas. During the Yule Ball, he met Ginny Weasley for the first time. They eventually started dating. She convinced him to join Dumbledore's army with her. They had a bit of a rocky relationship, and after she became Gryffindor's Seeker and beat Ravenclaw, she and Michael's relationship ended. Michael Corner was initially played by Ryan Nelson. He was only in Order of the Phoenix. The role was actually listed as Slightly Creepy Boy, but it's obviously Michael Corner. An uncredited extra replaced him. Some sources say his name was Jack Reed, but he was there in the requirement in Deathly Hallows Part 2. Since Michael Corner became an uncredited background character, it's easy to cast someone as an extra rather than to bring back Ryan Nelson. Number 8. Lavender Brown. Lavender Brown was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as Ron Weasley. She became good friends with Parvati Patil and became very interested in divination class. She developed a crush on Ron Weasley during her 6th year, and the two of them eventually started dating. After developing jealous feelings over Hermione, she and Ron broke up. As a member of Dumbledore's army, she would stay and defend Hogwarts, but unfortunately she met her end after being attacked by Fenrir Greyback. Lavender Brown was initially played by Kathleen Cawley. She was in Chamber of Secrets. When you see her in the movie, she is mistakenly put in a Hufflepuff uniform. She was replaced by Jennifer Smith for Prisoner of Azkaban. Properly back in Gryffindor colors, you can see her in several scenes, but she doesn't have any lines. Number 9. Lavender Brown. The final actress to play Lavender Brown was Jessie Cave. She was cast in Half-Blood Prince and would be in the Deathly Hallows films. The recasting ruffled many feathers when changing the character's race. Lavender Brown doesn't get much of a physical description in the books. The closest thing we get is in the Half-Blood Prince book, where it says, "There in full view of the whole room, Ron stood wrapped so closely around Lavender it was hard to tell whose hands were whose." That at least suggests that she and Ron are the same race, but that didn't play a part in casting for Lavender Brown. The only requirement was to be between the ages of 15 and 18 and a resident of UK or Ireland. Jessie Cave just did really well in her auditions and clicked with Rupert Grint. Number 10. Mafalda Hopkirk. Mafalda Hopkirk was a Ministry of Magic employee working in the Improper Use of Magic department. She was the one who sent a letter to Harry Potter after Dobby used a hover charm at the Dursleys. Years later, Hermione Granger would use her hair for the Polyjuice potion she drinks to break into the Ministry. Mafalda Hopkirk was initially played by Jessica Hines, though it was just voiceover work. We hear her in Order of the Phoenix when Harry receives the letter from the Ministry for using the Patronus charm in front of a Muggle. She was replaced by Sophie Thompson for Deathly Hallows Part 1. Sophie Thompson is actually the sister of Emma Thompson, who played Professor Trelawney, but unfortunately they didn't get a chance to be together on set at the same time. Jessica Hines is much more than a voiceover actress. She's been in several movies and shows. It looks like she was tied up with some other projects at the same time as filming, but I can't say for sure that was the reason why she didn't get asked to come audition for the role again. Honorable mention. This honorable mention is for an official replacement of a role not in the Harry Potter series, but in the other Wizarding World series of the Fantastic Beasts. In the Fantastic Beasts series, Johnny Depp and Mads Mikkelsen played the same version of Grindelwald. After the second film, Warner Brothers asked Johnny Depp to resign from playing the role of Grindelwald as he was in a highly publicized legal battle with his ex-wife. This was when the role was recast and given to Mikkelsen. They both played the role very well. Depp had such an amazing dramatic flair in the rally scene, and you could really feel Mikkelsen's connection to Dumbledore in the diner scene. Number 11. Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore was the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He helped Harry gain the knowledge and skills to defeat Voldemort, while also being the leader of the Order of the Phoenix. Albus Dumbledore was initially played by Richard Harris. He was a wonderful Dumbledore in the first two films. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in August 2002 and would pass away in October. For the remainder of the films, he was replaced by actor Michael Gambon. Gambon took a different direction for the role as he didn't want to replace Harris as Dumbledore. He also didn't read the book, so he wouldn't be disappointed by the adjustments made along the way. If he didn't know, he could just go off of what was given to him in the script and be happy with it. Number 12. Aberforth Dumbledore. Aberforth Dumbledore was the younger brother of Albus. He owned and ran the Hogshead Inn in Hogsmeade. He helped conceal the passageway in and out of Hogwarts. Aberforth Dumbledore was initially played by Jim McManus in the Order of the Phoenix. He was listed as barman, but being the Hogshead Inn and pub owner and having a goat by his side, it's clearly Aberforth. For Deathly Hallows Part 2, he was replaced by Ciarán Hinds. Hinds underwent a transformation with prosthetics to appear closer to Michael Gambon as Albus Dumbledore. This was a much more significant role than in the Order of the Phoenix, where he was just in the background. It appears that Jim McManus was stepping back from acting around the time Deathly Hallows would have been filmed. He only had one acting credit after this period. If he was asked to come back, it appears that he would have turned it down due to being semi-retired from acting. Number 13. Elphias Doge. Elphias Doge was a good friend of Albus Dumbledore. He would join the Order of the Phoenix during both Wizarding Wars. As an Order member, he was part of the advance guard to pick up Harry from the Dursleys. Harry would also talk to Doge while being disguised at Bill and Flora's wedding. Elphias Doge was initially played by Peter Cartwright. He was only in the Order of the Phoenix. There were a couple of shots at the beginning of the movie with Cartwright without any lines. He was replaced by David Ryle for the Deathly Hallows Part 1. This role was upgraded to a speaking role as he had a conversation with Harry Potter at Bill and Flora's wedding. It seems that, just like Jim McManus, Peter Cartwright was nearing retirement. He was still acting in Emmerdale Farm when Deathly Hallows was filming, but he finished that in 2010 and had a final single episode role in Doctor Who in 2012. This is probably why the role was recast for Deathly Hallows. Number 14. Helena Ravenclaw. Helena Ravenclaw was the daughter of one of the founders of Hogwarts. She met an untimely death after stealing her mother's diadem. She returned to Hogwarts as a ghost, often called the Grey Lady. A young Tom Riddle tricked her into giving up the location of the diadem, which she turned into a Horcrux. Helena Ravenclaw was initially played by Nina Young. She was in the first two films before most of the ghosts seemed to disappear from Hogwarts. She was replaced by Kelly MacDonald for Deathly Hallows Part 2. The role became a more significant part. No more floating around the Great Hall for Helena Ravenclaw. She helped Harry locate the lost diadem. Since so much time had passed, recasting the role made the most sense. Kelly MacDonald, who was in the running for Nymphadora Tonks before Natalia Tena got the role, was asked to come back to play the Grey Lady. Number 15. The Fat Lady. The Fat Lady was the woman in the portrait who guarded the door to the Gryffindor's tower. She would allow anyone to enter as long as they knew the correct password, like allowing fugitive Sirius Black to gain entrance after escaping Azkaban. She also didn't like to be bothered when she was sleeping. The Fat Lady was initially played by Elizabeth Spriggs. She was in The Philosopher's Stone. Her portrait didn't move until she was approached, and she would ask for the password before letting a student in. She was replaced by Dawn French for The Prisoner of Azkaban. She became a completely different portrait with a lot more personality. It seems that director Alfonso Cuarón wanted a more lively portrait, especially for the attack scene, which is why there was a need for a new actress. Unfortunately, we don't see her portrait beyond Prisoner of Azkaban. Number 16. Griphook. Griphook was a goblin who worked at Gringotts Wizarding Bank. He was the one who brought Harry Potter to his vault for the first time. He would be later picked up by Snatchers and held hostage in Malfoy Manor. Griphook would help the trio to break into Gringotts to retrieve Helga Hufflepuff's cup from the Lestrange's vault. Griphook was initially played by Vern Troyer. Like Eleanor Columbus, he was one of the very few non-British cast members on set. Troyer was only in the first movie, and his voice was dubbed over by Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis would later replace Vernon Troyer in body and voice. Davis played the role in the Deathly Hallows movies. Throughout the series, he was also Professor Flitwick and the Frog Conductor. The replacement in the later films happened because of the British rule. Even though Warwick Davis already voiced Griphook, he still had auditioned for the role, which he plays so well. Number 17. Kreacher. Kreacher was the house elf to the Black family. Sirius and Kreacher never got along while he lived there and treated him poorly. After Sirius's death, Harry Potter became his new master. Harry learned about him, Regulus, and the locket, promising he would finish what Regulus had set out to do. Kreacher ended up fighting against Voldemort in the Battle of Hogwarts. Kreacher was initially played by Timothy Bateson in the Order of the Phoenix. He voiced the character while having his face recorded to better help the CGI process. He was replaced by Simon McBurney for Deathly Hallows. Many people didn't notice since he did such a good job at mimicking how Bateson spoke the lines. The role was replaced after Timothy Bateson's passing in 2009. He was 83 years old. Warwick Davis helped in the replacement process. He owns a management company called Willow Management, which specializes in actors under 5 feet or over 7 feet. Number 18. Voldemort. Voldemort, also known as Tom Riddle, was a dark wizard who set out to rule over those he saw as less than. He created several Horcruxes to ensure he wouldn't fully die. After being told a prophecy about the one who could stop him, he set out to kill Harry Potter. After years of gaining followers to fight by his side, he would in fact meet his end by fighting Harry Potter. Voldemort was initially played by Richard Bremmer. He appeared in flashback scenes in The Philosopher's Stone. Also, the original idea for Voldemort's face on the back of Quirrell's head would be Bremmer in prosthetics. He even went through the process of having them put on, though it ended up being CGI. He was replaced by Ralph Fiennes starting in The Goblet of Fire. Fiennes played the role throughout the rest of the series. He was very dedicated to the role and played it fabulously. The replacement happened because the role was much more extensive and more critical. Bremmer had stated he wasn't asked to return, which he completely understood and was happy to pass the torch to Fiennes. Number 19. Tom Riddle as a teenager. The teenage Tom Riddle was initially played by Christian Coulson. In the Chamber of Secrets, we see a Tom Riddle in the flashback scenes and down in the chamber coming to power. He was replaced by Frank Delane in Half-Blood Prince. We see him in Professor Slughorn's flashback memories. Christian Coulson showed interest in the role when he heard that there would be more flashback scenes, but because he was in his 30s by the time Half-Blood Prince was filming, Yates passed on him. Number 20. Harry Potter as a baby. Harry Potter was the baby prophesied to defeat the Dark Lord. After his parents were killed, he was raised by his Aunt Petunia. He attended Hogwarts, where he learned magic, the truth of his past, and what he had to do to help save the wizarding world, and then he saves it. Baby Harry Potter was initially played by the Saunders triplets. Due to child labor laws, it was easier to have twins or triplets play this role. Plus, when one was fussy, they could keep the filming process going with one of their siblings. Toby Papworth replaced them in the Deathly Hallows to show the memories of the night of the attack at Godric's Hollow and him crying in his crib. Since this was 10 years after Philosopher's Stone, it's pretty clear why the Saunders triplets couldn't reprise their role. Honorable mention. The second honorable mention goes to Hagrid and Madame Maxime. We know those roles were famously played by Robbie Coltrane and Francis de la Tour, but I mention them here because their roles were also played by other actors. Both characters had a body double to make their characters appear taller in scenes that weren't close up. Animatronic heads were made and worn to look as closely as possible to the main actors. Robbie Coltrane's body double was actor and former rugby player Martin Bayfield. Francis de la Tour's body double was actor and former basketball player Ian White. Number 21. Padma Patil. Padma Patil was a Ravenclaw student sorted the same year as Hermione Granger. She would attend the Yule Ball with Ron Weasley. During her 5th year, she would become a Ravenclaw prefect and join Dumbledore's army. She and her sister would have to convince their parents to return to Hogwarts in their 6th year. Their parents were afraid for their safety. During the Battle of Hogwarts, she would fight along with her sister and Dean Thomas. Padma Patil was initially played by Sharon Sandhu. She appeared in The Prisoner of Azkaban. Even though she's in Ravenclaw in the books, the movies placed her in Gryffindor to clarify that she had a fraternal twin at Hogwarts with her. She was replaced by Afshan Assad for the remainder of the series, starting with Goblet of Fire. The twins, who were Ron and Harry's dates, had a larger role in Goblet of Fire. From what I've read, the roles of Padma and Pavarti were replaced not necessarily because they were more significant roles, but because the girls appeared much younger than the other classmates. They wanted the actresses to look a little more age appropriate since they were starting to get into the territory of crushes and dating. Number 22. Pavarti Patil. Pavarti Patil was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as Lavender Brown. She and Lavender would become good friends. Pavarti showed her Gryffindor colors by standing up for Neville when Draco took his Remember-All. She would also become a member of Dumbledore's army. During her 4th year, Harry invited her to the Yule Ball. When the battle at Hogwarts broke out, she went up against the Death Eater Travis. Dolohov incapacitated her, but she survived. Pavarti Patil was initially played by Sitara Shahan. She was only in The Prisoner of Azkaban. She was replaced by Shafali Chaudhry for The Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, and Half-Blood Prince. She did not return for the Deathly Hallows movies, possibly focusing on furthering her education. Number 23. Angelina Johnson. Angelina Johnson was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as George Weasley. She would become good friends with the Weasley twins and join the Quidditch team with them. She was one of the Chasers. During her 6th year, she would put her name into the Goblet of Fire, but Cedric Diggory's name was drawn. Fred Weasley would go on to ask her to the Yule Ball, which she said yes. In her final year, she would become the Quidditch captain. Being a part of Dumbledore's army, she kept in contact after graduating, and when she got the signal, she would return to fight. Angelina Johnson was initially played by Danielle Tabor. She played her for Philosopher's Stone through Prisoner of Azkaban. She was replaced by Tiana Benjamin, who joined during Goblet of Fire, and would also appear in the Order of the Phoenix. However, she was unable to return for later films due to scheduling conflicts with other projects she was working on. Just like the Patil twins, this role was recast to match someone who looked closer to the age and height of the Weasley twins. Number 24. Katie Bell. Katie Bell was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as Cho Chang. She was a chaser for the Gryffindor Quidditch team. In her 6th year, during one of her Quidditch practices, she would get hit in the face with a quaffle, causing a nosebleed. Fred, trying to help, gave her something from his pocket, but it worsened it, leading her to needing to go to the hospital wing. In her 7th year at Hogwarts, she was placed under the Imperius Curse to deliver a cursed necklace to Dumbledore. Accidentally touching a part of the necklace through a hole, she would experience terrible pain, but would survive. She would need to stay at St. Mungo's for months to recover. When Hogwarts was under attack, she would return to the school to fight. Katie Bell was initially played by Emily Dale. She appeared in the first 2 films, mainly in the background. These 2 movies seem to be her only 2 acting credits. She was replaced by an unnamed extra in Prisoner of Azkaban, and it was just a brief scene in the hospital wing at Hogwarts. Number 25. Katie Bell. Georgina Ladondas would replace the unnamed extra. She would join during Half-Blood Prince and would also appear in the Deathly Hallows. Since the role had previously been cast with new-to-acting actresses, they wanted to cast someone with a little more experience on their resume to play out the cursed necklace scene. Number 26. Alicia Spinnet. Alicia Spinnet was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as Fred Weasley. She was the Gryffindor Quidditch reserve player until there was a spot to become a chaser. She attended as many Dumbledore Army meetings as possible while ensuring Umbridge wouldn't kick her off the Quidditch team. After graduating, she would return to fight at Hogwarts with her previous Quidditch and DA members. Alicia Spinnet was initially played by Leanna Sutherland in The Philosopher's Stone. Rochelle Douglas replaced her for Chamber of Secrets. In both movies, Alicia Spinnet was there in the background, so it didn't seem super important to the casting crew to get Sutherland back. Number 27. Alicia Spinnet. The role would become an even deeper background character as an unnamed extra for Prisoner of Azkaban. It was just a brief scene in the hospital wing at Hogwarts. After this movie, she disappeared for the remainder of the films. Number 28. Oliver Wood. Oliver Wood was a Gryffindor student sorted the same year as Percy Weasley. He loved Quidditch and was the Gryffindor Quidditch captain. During the summers, Oliver would even plan the following year's strategies. It was his dream to win the Quidditch House Cup. After graduating, he would become a keeper on the Puddlemere United's reserves team. When he got word that his old Quidditch teammates were heading back to Hogwarts to fight, he would join them. Oliver Wood was initially played by Sean Biggerstaff. He was replaced by an unnamed extra for Prisoner of Azkaban. Like Katie Bell and Alicia Spinnet, this was an unnamed extra just in the hospital scene. Number 29. Oliver Wood. For the final movie, this unnamed extra would be replaced by the original actor, Sean Biggerstaff. He makes a brief cameo in the Battle of Hogwarts. Number 30. Cedric Diggory. Cedric Diggory was a Hufflepuff student, sort of the same year as Lee Jordan. He was a prefect and seeker for Hufflepuff. He would become a Triwizard champion after having his name come out of the Goblet of Fire. He would compete in the cup, and in the end, he and Harry Potter would grab the cup together. Unknown to them, it was a Portkey trap where Voldemort and his Death Eaters were, which led to Cedric's death. Cedric Diggory was initially played by Joe Livermore. He had a brief moment in the Gryffindor vs. Hufflepuff Quidditch match in Prisoner of Azkaban. Robert Pattinson would replace him for Goblet of Fire. From being just a stunt role to a central role for the movie, the cast and crew wanted to make sure they had someone who could really make you feel for the character. Robert Pattinson, who at the time only had 2 other acting credits, sure won the hearts of many people. Honorable mention. The final honorable mention goes to Slytherin Quidditch players Pusey, Flint, and Higgs. They made it onto the list not because they were replaced, but because if you read the credits and not pay attention to the movies, you might think they did. There was a major credit mishap for these characters. Adrian Pusey was played by Scott Fern in the first 2 films. For the Philosopher's Stone, it was listed stunt double David Holmes for the role. It was fixed in the Chamber of Secrets, but they misspelled his last name. Marcus Flint was played by Jamie Yeats in the first 2 films. For Philosopher's Stone, it was listed as Will Teakstone in the role. It was also fixed for Chamber of Secrets, but again, his name was misspelled. Terrence Higgs was played by Will Teakston in Philosopher's Stone. In this movie, he was listed as Scott Ferns for the role. He did not come back for the second film. Number 31. Mr. Granger. Mr. Granger was Hermione's father. Mr. Granger was initially played by Tom Knight in the Chamber of Secrets. There is a moment in the movie where you can see him in Flourish and Blotts. He was replaced by Ian Kelly in Deathly Hallows Part 1. While this was still a non-speaking role, we get to see a moment in the movie on the couch and in photo shoots required for this role. As this was essentially a background character, it was easier to cast a new actor than to contact the original actor years later to come back for what was just a few days of work. Number 32. Mrs. Granger. Mrs. Granger was Hermione's mother. Mrs. Granger was initially played by Heather Bealstill in The Chamber of Secrets. We see her in Flourish and Blotts with her husband, waiting in line for Gilderoy Lockhart with the Weasleys. She was replaced by Michelle Fairley. This time, there's a single spoken line of her calling Hermione from another room. Then we see her and her husband in the living room and the photos in the room. Again, just like her husband, it makes sense to hire a new than to have the original actress come back. Number 33. Bill Weasley. Bill Weasley was a Gryffindor student who graduated 2 years before Harry Potter started at Hogwarts. He was the oldest son of Molly and Arthur Weasley. After leaving Hogwarts, he became a curse breaker for Gringotts. He would go on to marry Fleur Delacour and helped fight in the battle at Hogwarts. Bill Weasley was initially played by Richard Fish in The Prisoner of Azkaban. This role was a matter of seconds on the screen in the moving picture of the Weasleys in the Daily Prophet. He was replaced by Domhnall Gleeson for the Deathly Hallows films. Gleeson is the real-life son of the actor who played Mad-Eye Moody, though this was not how he got his role. He had previously auditioned for earlier films and didn't get callbacks, but luckily, what he really wanted was to be a Weasley, and finally, a spot opened. It's not surprising that this was a recast since the original role was just standing and looking happy in a photo. Number 34. Tom. Tom was a landlord, innkeeper, and barman at the Leaky Cauldron. The Leaky Cauldron was a pub and inn connecting London's Muggleside to Diagon Alley. Harry Potter would stay here the summer before his 3rd year at Hogwarts after being picked up by the night bus. Tom was initially played by Derek Dedman. He was in The Philosopher's Stone. Even though it was a small role, I really liked the way he portrayed the character. There was a calm amazement on his face when welcoming Harry back to the Wizarding World. He was replaced by Jim Taver for Prisoner of Azkaban. This was a very different Tom from the first film. His character became bald, hunchbacked, and only made sounds. I think this was Alfonso Cuarón's way of either making it edgy or maybe a little weird comedic relief. I'm not really sure what the thought process was. Number 35. Walden McNair. Walden McNair was one of Voldemort's Death Eaters. He found a way to avoid time in Azkaban and ended up working as an executioner for the Ministry of Magic. He would be the one to come to Hogwarts for Buckbeak. He was also in the Battle of the Department of Mysteries and would fight at the Battle at Hogwarts. Walden McNair was initially played by Peter Best. This was in the Prisoner of Azkaban movie. We see him with the executioner mask on down by Hagrid's hut. Ashley Artis replaced him in Goblet of Fire. This was a pretty quick role without any lines. Number 36, Walden McNair. The original actor, Peter Best, would then replace Ashley Artis for Order of the Phoenix. We would see him in the Battle in Department of Mysteries. Number 37, Walden McNair. The last to portray McNair was Granville Saxton in the Deathly Hallows movies. The role was downgraded to just Death Eaters. The only two roles Peter Best is credited for are the two movies in which he played Walden McNair, so it seems like he probably didn't want to reprise his role for Deathly Hallows. Number 38, Bozo. Bozo was a photographer for the Daily Prophet. He took photos at Gilderoy Lockhart's book signing at Flourish and Blotts, and he also covered the Triwizard Tournament with writer Rita Skeeter. Bozo was initially played by Peter O'Farrell in The Chamber of Secrets. The name given in the credits was Short Man Daily Prophet. He was replaced by Robert Wilford for Goblet of Fire, this time credited as photographer. When the books originally came out, it was unknown if this was the same person, but back when Pottermore was still active, it did list Bozo as the photographer of both events. Since the filming of Chamber of Secrets, O'Farrell had only appeared in a single shot, so it's not surprising that he wasn't contacted or did not want to return for Goblet of Fire, and the role was recast. Number 39, the Trolley Witch. The Trolley Witch was an older woman who brought around the sweets carts to students on the Hogwarts Express. On Harry's first trip on the train, he purchased loads of sweets from her. The Trolley Witch was initially played by Jean Southern in The Philosopher's Stone. She was replaced by Marjorie Manson for Goblet of Fire. Fun fact, Marjorie Manson was 92 when she played this role. She was also in another one of my favorite movies, The Princess Bride, in the 80s, as the Ancient Booer. I'm not sure why the role was replaced, but I love Marjorie Manson, so I'm okay with it. Number 40, Miles Bletchley. Miles Bletchley was the Slytherin keeper for several years while Harry was on the Gryffindor team. One year, he joined in a plot to jinx the Gryffindor team and hit Alicia Spinnet with a jinx. Her eyebrows grew so much that she couldn't see, and it even covered her mouth. Miles Bletchley was initially played by Amy Dominica. While the credited role was listed as Quidditch player, those who read the book knew that the keeper was Miles Bletchley. She was replaced by David Churchill in Chamber of Secrets. This time, the role was listed as Quidditch keeper. The recasting was probably due to the fact that there were no female players on the Slytherin team, and there was a named keeper. So keeping to the books, they fixed it in the second film. So there it is, 40 actors who were replaced during the Harry Potter movies. Were there any actors you wish weren't replaced, or maybe even you wish were replaced? Let me know. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please consider giving a like and drop a comment. You can also subscribe for more videos. I'll be back again soon with another video, but until then, keep enjoying the magic!